What is up, YouTube? I have Greg Boysen again. Everybody in the comments was saying he needed to come back on. That video was awesome, so thank you for the support. But thank you so much for being on, Greg. How did you like watching the draft at home this year with that new experience?
It sucked. It was everything about it was bad. The it took way too long. It reminded me of the COVID draft that took forever. Um, the centralized draft is one of the coolest things that the NHL actually does right. So of course they're gonna screw with that. It's one of the things that separates them from everybody else and makes them different, which is good. So of course they ruined that, and it just took too long. It was too clunky. That whole weird Zoom call with your new boss was just terrible idea, and even worse execution. And even day two, I know you were there in LA, but if you'd ever been to the previous ones, I got to cover the draft in Vegas and Nashville, and that second day is crazy because it's literally like every 2 minutes there's another pick, and it just even that was much longer than it needed to be. So it sucked. Everything about it, just the whole experience was not great. Hopefully, and it sounds like it that they've realized they screwed up and they'll go back to the centralized everybody there on the arena floor draft again next year. It's just a better, smoother process when everybody's in the same building.
Yeah, yeah. So when a player gets drafted, they usually bring them up to the third floor or whatever area it is. It's designated for interviews. After the 50th or 60th prospect, the agents and the teams just were like, you don't need to bring them up there. So media was so bored that the last interview we got, like after a 3 hour break, was Aiden Park, who got drafted the second to last pick of the Oilers, and he was there. So that was the story basically of the draft day two, other than that LA kid who that was awesome. If you like the guy with Crocs that just started screaming. But can you tell me a little bit about your Vegas experience? Because I heard everybody was talking about the Sphere, how they wanted to go back, how incredible experience it was. So can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, Vegas was awesome. The Sphere is a cool place. It was a cool venue. They had all the graphics on there, and all the teams were on the floor. It was a little weird for media there because it was kind of like the Sphere really isn't set up like a sports arena to where you had designated areas for that. So that was a little weird, but thankfully we had multiple people there covering it, so one can stay back, and it made it easier. If it was one person just covering for an outlet, it would have been a little difficult. But Vegas is the perfect place to host something like that, just because it's everything is so centrally located. You have plenty of venues. You have there's no shortage of hotels and hotel rooms. You can do 100 different things, and you're never gonna go more than a mile away. It's the perfect place for something like that. Like I was back out there in April for WrestleMania, and people are upset that WrestleMania is going to be back there again. But it is the perfect place to host events like that. It is so convenient, and it's got the space for everything you possibly need. So Vegas was awesome. Nashville was a lot of fun too, but that's just because it's Nashville. Nashville's kind of like Vegas to the south,
Mhm.
so and everything was so close together there too. But yeah, Vegas was awesome. If they just do the draft in Vegas every year, I don't think very many people are ever going to complain about that.
I heard they want to switch off between Vegas and Montreal, so both places are good. Vegas is obviously probably easier to get to for me, but either way, I've never been to Montreal, so it would be a lot cooler. But can you talk to me about Anton Fondell, who obviously went third overall, and what you thought the Blackhawks did in the first round?
Well, Frondell was as soon as they landed third in the lottery, Frondell and I started really deep diving into who's going to be available there. Automatically ruling out Schaefer and pretty much ruling out Misa at that point. Frondell was the guy that I was like, yeah, that's the pick. You could talk all about, Martone and Higgins and all these other guys, but Frondell was the guy. I think he's got, potentially could be the best player out of this draft. at least up front. I was just super impressed by what he was able to do playing against grown men all year in Sweden. He wasn't doing it against 17 and 18-year-olds. He wasn't doing it against, eighth year seniors in college. He was doing it against hockey pros in a tough league. So I think he is a cerebral player, which is, those are the type of guys that succeed in today's game. It's still, hockey's still very instinctual sport, but those players that can think it at a different level and know what's going to happen before it happens are usually the best players. And the Hawks already have a few guys like that, so he should fit right in. And he's got that 200-foot game that everybody, that the Blackhawks need. Let's be honest with you, they got a lot of offensive first guys. They need that guy that can play, all the way, both sides of the ice, a la like a Jonathan Taves back in the day. He's got the skating and the speed that fits in. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. He's got a very high ceiling, and that was the guy I wanted once the draft lottery was over. He was the guy that I thought was the perfect fit for the Blackhawks. So very happy that that's where they went.
So he was asked, what position do you want to play in the NHL? He said whatever Connor Bedard wasn't. Do you see him as a fit for Connor Bedard's line, either as a winger or the center, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, he's already got the no iron team hockey mentality right there by even saying that. But I think it's a little too early to kind of predict. He's a natural center. I think he's more fit to be an NHL center than Connor Bedard. I still think Connor Bedard probably be best suited to play a wing eventually. And if you have an elite two-way center like Fondell, that makes that transition much easier. So it's definitely a possibility. I mean, you want to load up. You want to have a line that's impossible to defend. You want to have a Draisaitl McDavid type combo out there, and if Fondell is going to be half of that, awesome. But I think, as far as trying to project lines and all that stuff 2-3 years from now, it's a little too early for that stuff. I know it's exciting to think about it, but if they play on a line, listen, one thing I can guarantee, they'll play on the power play together. If they play 5-on-5 together, that could be kind of fun too.
Can I talk to you about the Blackhawks 25th pick? We took Vaslav Nestil out of Muskegon Lumberjacks, and it seems like we're taking a lot of Muskegon Lumberjacks lately. So can you talk to me about him and what you see his floor upside is with the Blackhawks?
Well, we're not taking as many Lumberjacks as we are Brantford Bulldogs, that's for sure. But this was a pick that I don't think was very surprising. There was a lot of smoke around this leading into the draft. This was a name that popped up late, and all of a sudden, a lot of people were saying, oh, they took him out to dinner and they really like what he brings. So, he was a late riser, at maybe a little bit of a reach at 25. You might have been able to get him, if they had kept that second round pick. But I don't have a problem with a general manager that identifies who he wants and just goes out and get him, even if it's a little early. You never know where he is on everybody else's board. So, but this is a guy that the Hawks need. I mean, for years, we've been hearing about how the Blackhawks need to get bigger, they need to get tougher, they need to get meaner. You've got all these skill players under 6 feet tall in the system. You need to start getting some bigger guys to help play with those guys, and he fits that bill at 6'5", and only getting bigger. He's lanky, but he's gonna fill out. He's already putting in the work. I don't know if you saw Ben Pope's article. He talked to him in at development camp, so he's already trying to add that muscle that he needs. He's still so young; it's going to take some time, but he's that two-way physical player but has some skill. He's an elite level playmaker. Can make a wide array of passes on the ice, which when you have a guy like Connor Bedard or Frank Nazar or whoever, his ability to find those guys on the ice is going to pay off huge. And usually when you get these tall, lanky young players, they're very weird, awkward on the ice skating wise. I like to say they look like giraffes on skates out there. That's not the case here. He's already a really smooth skater, and uses those long strides to get to top speed quickly with ease. Um, so he's a large, skilled winger that loves getting the puck off the wall, willing to engage, and he has elite playmaking, passing skills. So yeah, sign me up for some of that. That sounds really good. The Hawks need that.
Yeah, they added 13.2 feet with their 25th and 29th picks. And Vaslav is 6'6" now. So he's like he was 6'5" during the season, but this guy is still growing. I think they would probably want him to stay 6'6", but incredible talent, really raw offensive skilled. Can you talk to me about Mason West too? Because obviously he was the other 6'6" player the Blackhawks took at 29. And what did you think of that trade? Because the Hurricanes always seemingly trade back with us now.
It's a new summer tradition. The Blackhawks give up 2 second-round picks to get in the back with the Hurricanes. It's crazy to think that Anton Fondell is the smallest player the Blackhawks took in this draft, at 6'1". Mason West, I'm going to be honest with you, heading into the draft, I didn't really know a ton about him. He really wasn't on my radar, especially for first round. I at the list that I was putting together, I had him like, mid, late second round, possibly even third round. But again, there's over these last 3 years, there's been nothing done by this Blackhawks scouting staff that has made me not just say, okay, they must see something there. They've had a ton of success drafting. They know exactly the kind of guy they want. Mike Donahue says it all the time. Says, so I'm blue in the face. It's all about the traits. They know the kind of player they want. And the last time they traded back into a first round to pick a high school kid out of Minnesota, it's worked out pretty well for them. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know better. Until they absolutely bust out on one of these picks, they have my faith and my trust. So I didn't know a ton about West going into this draft, but after the pick was made, obviously doing some research, he's definitely an impressive athlete. Obviously, we've heard about the being the high school quarterback and still going to play and all that, but not the same type of player, but reminds me a lot of AJ Spellacy, just like the athletic specimen. And seeing this kid up close and personal at development camp, he is just a monster, and he's 17 years old, for crying out loud. Like, I can't even imagine what he's going to look like when he fully matures. Definitely an exciting prospect. Can be that big player. I mean, if both of their second two first round pick hits and reach their ceilings, the Blackhawks are going to be really, really hard to play against in 4 or 5 years. And you add guys like that who are big and can move and make plays into the mix with guys like Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar and some of these other kids that are coming up, a Nick Lardis and Oliver Moore. I mean, that gives you a really exciting mix of size, but they all have skill and they can all move and they can all skate. So, I know San Jose is the land of sunshine and lollipops right now. They're doing everything right, even though it's like, no, not really. What the Blackhawks have got cooking here, if none of this is guaranteed, but if these guys, reach their potential, hit their ceiling, they could have something really, really good here in a couple of years.
Yeah, you talked about the other player that was a Minnesota high school player, and that was actually Sam Renzel, another 6'5", above 6'5" high school player. So obviously it worked out well with Sam Renzel. He looks like one of our best defensive players on this team in the next few years, and we've really built up that back end. So I'm not surprised, and probably neither are you, that we went forward heavy in this class. Do you think next year for the 2026 class we could see a defensive player taken, like with one of our first two picks, or do you think that the Blackhawks are still going to try to do forwards? You know,
No, I think you may see again. I haven't even dipped into the 26 class yet. I need a break for a little bit on teenagers playing hockey, but I would imagine they'll definitely get at least a couple of defensemen next draft, just because you talk about how to do this correctly. You have to have waves. You have to have guys that can come in and be your young growing guys, future core members, but eventually you're going to need guys 2-3 years behind them to replace the veterans that have either moved on or whatnot, or if some of these guys in your first wave don't hit, you need guys to come in behind them and take those spots. So your young defensive core that we've heard about for so long, most of them are in the NHL right now. And the few that aren't are not far behind. So eventually you're going to need guys to be the next wave after that. Not all of these kids are going to stay here. I know everybody's favorite thing right now is to try and trade off Kevin Korchinski, which I think is a mistake at this point. But if you're going to get out and get one of these elite difference making forwards that we keep talking about, it's going to be on the trade market. Free agency is done, man. I mean, we saw this year, and that trend is going to continue. Like, free agency, you're not getting those guys on free agency anymore. So you got to go out and trade for a guy, and you're probably going to have to give up one of these young defensemen in order to get a guy like that. And so you need another group of prospects to come in and fill those voids. So you're constantly rotating guys. You don't know what the future lies for Ethan Del Mastro, Nolan Allen. Are they long-term guys? Are they guys you use in a trade to plug other holes? So yeah, definitely. I'm kind of surprised, they didn't get, a couple more defensemen this year, but I think next year, they'll look at that more. But this is a team that, a scouting staff that, a lot of teams will use, best player available as kind of a cliche. The Blackhawks really mean that. Like, they seem to just draft more of like, who's the best player regardless of need. We saw that last year with Levshunov. Did they need another top defenseman? Probably not. And you can always take them. You always want them. But did you need one? No. But they thought he was the best player available, and that's who they drafted. So, BPA gets thrown out a lot, but a lot of teams just say that. The Blackhawks mean it, but I think they'll focus on some defensemen next year.
Yeah, and it's always like best player available on their specific board. Obviously, some Blackhawks fans would probably say Davidov, but obviously what we're hearing with the entire scouting staff was that they loved Artem Levshunov. If you look at his point production, I think he had like 35 points in 38 games, and you see James Hagens with 37 and 37, and James Hagens was the best NCAA point producer out of anybody. So Artem Levshunov actually was pretty underrated. Do you see like just a scenario where the Blackhawks are going to be a lot better next year than we think, or do you think it's going to be another bottom 5 or 7 finish because of every other team looks like they're getting better and our prospects are just coming up? So I think the additions are going to be within the system.
Yeah, I mean, better is such a vague term. I mean, what do you consider better? Do you like 82 points but it's your here's how I look at it this way. If the Blackhawks finish with 70 points next year, it's not great. It's still going to be bottom 5, but it's Connor Bedard and it's Frank Nazar and it's Levshunov and Renzel. And they're doing all the heavy lifting. They're the big time contributors. Spencer Knight has a big year. Maybe Nick Lardis produces at this level. Oliver Moore, Colton Dock takes a step. You can live with that, even if it's 65 points. And it's those kids that are all having breakout years. You'll consider that a successful year. If you have another 56-point season and your top 5 scorers are Ryan Donato and Andre Burakovsky and Tyler Bertuzzi and Teuvo Teravainen, it's a bust. It's not good. You could even argue that, hey, if you have 80 points and all your top scorers are these veteran guys, it's better, but is it good for the big picture? So you want the young kids to be the heavy lifting. You want them to do what they're supposed to do. The veterans that have been there kind of like to insulate them a little bit, be more. At this point, you want to see them kind of becoming more of like second role players to these kids, and we saw that a little bit at the end of the last year. So if that can continue into this year, you know, that's going to be my goal on what is a successful season, not points particularly, but the people that matter for this team being a playoff team 2-3 years from now, are they the ones leading the way now? That's what I want to see. But I definitely think of points, even with the quiet free agency, I think they'll improve point wise. You got to figure, Jeff Blashill and his staff coming in could get you 3 extra wins from last year. You got to figure having Spencer Knight for a full season, that should be at least 2 more wins. Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar take that step we're all hoping they take. The defense plays better. That should account for 3 more wins this year. So right there, you're talking 8 more wins just on those factors. That's a 16-point improvement. That gets you 72 points. That's, doesn't sound great when you think, oh, we only won 8 more games than the year before, but how you win those games is what's important. Maybe you don't have that month where you're just losing 6-2 every game in January. You figure out a way to play better and get some, overtime, get games to overtime, earn some points. That's what you want to see. It's 82 games is such a long year. You're going to have those little pitfalls. You're going to have that roller coaster. But at the end of the year, if it's the youth that is, taking control of his team, and it's now Connor Bedard's locker room, and it's, Alex Vlasic's locker room, then they're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and now it could be 84 games, which we never know with the new CBA, but can you make a prediction if the next captain of the Blackhawks, if it's Vlasic, Connor Bedard, like even Anton Fondell could be in this, but who do you think would be the next captain of the Blackhawks for their next future?
I think, I think Connor Bedard definitely has the captain makeup of him, and I know it's people are ready to give him the C from day one, and the way he's handled what he's gone through these first 2 seasons have been tremendous. There was a ton of pressure put on him. The kid puts up ridiculous numbers as a teenager on one of the worst teams in the league, and people are calling him a bust, and he just kind of shrugs it off, and he's working his tail off this summer to get better, to break some of those bad habits. So he's more of a lead by example guy. Like Jonathan Toews was captain for the cup runs, but everybody will tell you that the actual leader of that team was Brent Seabrook. Toews wore the C, but it was Seabrook that was the one that got everybody's attention. I could kind of see the same thing with Connor Bedard being the captain and Alex Vlasic being that Brent Seabrook kind of guy, where he's the one that really gets the troops in line, so to speak. So I think the fan base overrates the captaincy far more than the players do, because the players know who the leaders are, and those are the guys that lead by example, and nobody works harder than Connor Bedard. So if your best player is putting in the most work, you have to do that too. Like if this naturally talented kid is outworking you, you have to be better. So I think regardless of who has the C and the A's in the year going forward, the players will know whose team it is, and they'll this core that we started to see at the end of last year will start making it theirs throughout this season. And at the end, to the team, the captaincy, yeah, it's a great honor for a player, but at the end, it's just the guy that gets to talk to the referees. They know who their leaders are. Some of the greatest leaders in team history, in league history, never wore a C. But it's going out and leading by example that makes you a leader, not a letter on your sweater.
I love that. That's perfectly said. And I didn't actually know about the Brent Seabrook thing. I don't really talk to a lot of the former players, but that was news to me. So that's really interesting. I know he wore the A and scored some incredible overtime winners, but yeah, that was cool. Shout out Brent Seabrook. But can you talk to me about some of the young players that you think could potentially make the roster, like Nick Lardis, Oliver Moore, like even Sam Renzel, Artem Levshunov, like Korchinski maybe, but do you think any of those guys are going to have a solidified a role on the 2026 Blackhawks, or are they going to take the Frank and Nazar path where they play a boatload of games in the AHL, then come up like in December?
I think it's going to be up to the players to decide that. There's not a lot of spots open for them, which is by design and which is good. You got to have the competition. You just don't want to hand a kid who's never been in the NHL spot and say, "You're our second line winger. Have at it." That's a recipe for failure. I don't think Sam Renzel is ever going to play a game in the AHL. I think he's that good and that natural. I think he'll earn that spot out of camp. Levshunov, I'm going, if I had to predict, unless he, shows up in camp a little bigger and just tells the Blackhawks I'm ready, I think he'll start in the AHL. I think there was some concerns about how he played in that Milwaukee playoff series that has them a little, not ready to make him their full-time NHLer. But again, he has a whole off season to work on these things and see how he gets in camp. I'd love to see Kevin Korchinski make the roster out of camp. It'd be a little tough for him, but I think, another summer of getting bigger and working on these things. I really love the way he played in the playoffs. It brought a little more physical edge to his game, which I hadn't seen before. That was encouraging. So, he's still so young too. Like if he doesn't make the NHL out of camp, it's not, he's not a bust. He's just a young defenseman. He's 21 years old. I mean, if you watch Duncan Keith as a 21-year-old defenseman, you would have never thought he would be a Hall of Famer. So these kids need time. Nick Lardis, I think he's a sexy pick to make out of camp. I mean, his shot is ridiculous. He is getting a little bit bigger. He is filling out a little bit. He told us at development camp that he's up to 6 feet, so he's not undersized anymore. He hit the magic number. But some AHL time would be really good for him. I think he needs to, as former assistant coach Derek King used to say, you have to coach the junior out of these guys. The Connor Bedard, even in year 2 in the AHL, was still trying some of his tricks that worked for him in juniors. Yep. That doesn't work in the NHL. So some time in the AHL will probably be right. I think Lardis will be an ice hog to start the year, unless again he just blows people's minds in training camp or there's some injuries. Oliver Moore is another guy that I think could use some time in the AHL. So the guys that I want to see take a step, I'm okay with those guys going to Rockford. That's what it's there for. They've got a really good system in place. And you're always going to need guys as the season goes on. But the guys I want to see take a step are kind of like the veterans of the prospect groups, guys like Landon Slaggert and Colton Dock, who might be in jeopardy of getting bumped out of the organization here. With every draft class that gets added to the system, these guys have to get better or else they're going to get left behind and they're going to be looking, for fresh starts elsewhere. So I want to see those two guys kind of up their game and make a case to be all 82 game NHL players. The Blackhawks need what those guys bring. But you have all these kids coming up and there's only so many spots. So hopefully they feel the pressure and they up their game as well.
Yeah, it was interesting, like with Lardis, because he obviously scored 72 goals, but a lot of the scouts that I've talked to are worried about his NHL readiness. But I feel that the AHL probably would be a better slot for him. But do you see him as like a top 6 player, or like say Anton Fondell is in the SHL or whatever he does. But do you see Nick Lardis playing in the top 6 for this team, as well as like a player like Kanserov? Because both of those players kind of are very similar, but they play differently. But there's not a lot of top 6 spots left for this team.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing to have too many top 6 forwards. True. I mean, you can have a really good third line. If their ceilings are definitely top 6, second line type guys, power play guys, will they be that right away? Probably not. They're going to need some time to figure out, NHL defenseman, NHL time and space, everything. Anytime you talk to any player that goes from any league to a step up, whether it's juniors to AHL or college to AHL, AHL to NHL, the first thing they will always say is the difference in speed, as far as how little time and space you actually get. So it's going to take a time of how quickly they can adjust to that and reinforce their games to take into account that, hey, I used to get 2 seconds to make a play where I used to play. Now I get less than one. How do I adapt? That's a tough adjustment for a lot of young players to make. Some of them never make that adjustment. So, saying, hey, anointing Nick Lardis as a top 6 player from day one puts a lot of pressure on him. If he's your third line winger and he's sniping goals, you've got a pretty damn good hockey team. That's not a failure on Nick Lardis. That just tells me that you have, a really deep team. And something I've been telling people for years since this rebuild process starts, don't fall in love with every single prospect, because some of these guys are never going to make the NHL, and B, some of these guys are going to get traded to fill in other holes. So we can list all these names and say, my God, we've got, our entire Stanley Cup winning team in 2029 are going to be guys we drafted. It's probably not going to happen that way. So, if Nick Lardis gets us something we don't have 2 years from now, maybe you make a tough decision, or you trade somebody else to make the room for Nick Lardis. So many things can happen between now and when all the dust settles here. So you just kind of got to ride the wave and let it play out.
So before we talked, or like, Ryan Donato is still a free agent, and then he signed that 4 by 16 million, which was coincidentally the contract that Brian Bickle signed in 2013 or whenever it was, 2015, but he had signed that 4 by 16 after his playoff run. So could you tell me about like where you were and what you were doing when Ryan Donato signed that, and what were your first reaction?
Um, it's fine. Like, he earned it. I'm happy for him. You talk about guys that don't need a letter on their jersey to be a leader. He's one of those guys. He's a lead by example guy. A year ago, he was told he needs to be a better skater. So what did he do? He worked his ass off all summer long and became a better skater. And look what it did for him. It got him 30 goals and $16 million. So, that's why, some of these younger kids, when they say, oh, he can't skate. Well, if Ryan Donato could become a better skater at 29, certainly a 19-year-old kid could become a better skater if he wants to. It's fine. Like, the original deal that was given to him at the deadline was 3 years, 12 million. So he got the extra year. The money never got higher. And let's face it, he's earned it. He earned that 4th year. Do I expect 30 goals, 60 points from him each of the next 4 years? No, I don't. But if you can get 20 and 50, that's great. But he's such a valuable player to this team, both on and off the ice. On the ice, he's versatile. He play anywhere you want. He can play top line. He can play 4th line. He can, be a useful player on the power play, can kill penalties if you need them. He's a physical player. He's one of the few guys on this team last year that you never had to worry about him taking a night off. Constantly, he's one of the few players on this team last year that would win more of his one-on-one battles and lose them, engage in one-on-one battles, hunt for pucks, do all those little things, get to the front of the net, pay the price, all that stuff. He does it night in, night out. So he's a lead by example guy. If you can get some of these kids coming up to emulate his work ethic and his style of play, then they're going to be in a really good spot. So the contract is great for him. It doesn't hurt the team at all. And, it's a contract that in 2-3 years from now is super tradable. So I'm just it's one of those deals where I think you can argue that, like, hey, both sides won on that. They got what they wanted and everybody's happy. And, he's putting in the work already this summer to keep improving that skating, and he's working with Adam Oates again. And I expect another really good season from Ryan Donato. 30 goals, I wouldn't bet on it, but pop net 20, and that's a good season.
Yeah, and obviously the Blackhawks reacquired Sam Lafferty, who's becoming Kyle Davidson's Brandon Saad. Can you talk to me about Sam Lafferty and like kind of his role? Do you see him as a penalty killer again, or like what we're getting with him again?
Yeah, I mean, find someone that loves you like Kyle Davidson loves Sam Lafferty. Like,
Yeah.
it's becoming a yearly tradition. We trade with the Carolina Hurricanes to get back in, and then we reacquire Sam Lafferty. The logic behind it was spot on. Instead of going out and signing a guy on the free agent market for multiple years at 2 million per, bring in a guy exactly what you're getting for only 1 year. You know what you're getting out of Sam Lafferty. He's not going to block any of these young kids. If Landon Flaggart or Colton Dock or Oliver Moore is playing better than Sam Lafferty will sit. Like, he's not a big time free agent. You're getting a fast player, defensively really sound player, one of these fourth line grinder types that has a little bit of skill. And the idea of seeing Ilya Mikheyev and Sam Lafferty on the same PK unit, that's going to be fun. Those guys are going to net some shorties this year. There's no doubt about that. He's a good teammate. He'll defend his players if need be. Plays that straight ahead, hard to play against type of hockey that this team needs more of. You know what you're getting out of him. And as I said, if he's not performing, he'll sit. You don't have a problem scratching a guy who's making $2 million on the last year of his contract. And if he plays well and you have young kids coming up, you flip him at the deadline. He's the type of player that teams that are trying to make deep runs crave at the deadline. Those fourth line penalty kill guys, those role guys that accept their role and do the dirty work. You need those guys on your team. The Florida Panthers have a whole bunch of those guys. So if he plays well and you got other guys coming up, you flip him at the deadline for a 5th round pick and you turn a 6th round pick into a 5th round pick. Everybody wins. There's nothing to be mad at by that acquisition.
Yeah, and can you make a prediction for the Blackhawks points next year? And do you think that we will have a good shot at McKenna? As in good shot, I mean like 10%. But do you think that the Blackhawks are going to be in that McKenna race next year?
I hate making predictions because I'm always wrong, like really wrong. Last year, I thought the Hawks were going to be like around 72, 74 points, and that didn't go very well. But I think they can flirt at that. As I said earlier, the blast shield in the night and the kids taking the step should get you at least 8 to 10 more wins. So that gets you in the low 70s right there. Even if you have 75 points, that's probably still bottom 4 or 5 in the league. So it gets you a good shot at McKenna. I, for one, am sick and tired of, looking at draft lottery odds after every game. I'm tired of worrying about, hey, who are we going to get as this next top 3 pick? But unfortunately, I think that's where they're going to be for this next year. We'll see what happens. I was kind of hoping by now the Hawks would be kind of where the Coyotes were last year, ready to, like, they play well for a lot of the season. They were right there in the wild card conversation and then kind of tapered off towards the end. And now look at them now. I mean, I think they're ready to be a playoff team with some of the additions they made. I was kind of hoping the Hawks would be at that point now, but they're probably at least another year away from that. So if you improve and you get 76 points, I'm going to say they'll get 72 points. I think that's a reasonable expectation. Anything more is great. So even if you finish with 72 and you somehow win the lottery, that's great. But if this team surprises and somehow they get 80, 85 points, they go on a heater and they end up picking 7th or 8th. But as I said earlier, it's Connor Bedard scoring 35, 40 goals and Frank Nazar being a star, and you don't get Gavin McKenna,
Mhm.
that's perfect. That's perfectly fine too. Like, it's overdue to be of like we need to stop relying on who's going to be the number one overall pick next year to save this thing. Let's start winning with the guys we have and worry about the draft when we get there.
That was a great answer, and I love that prediction. 72 points is not bad at all. It's great to see that the young kids are doing it. So like you said earlier, it would be better if the young kids are the ones that are like the captain and the caboose to this rebuild or next season and not just the veterans, because that would really stink. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on again. This was awesome. And this is your time as like a Hot Ones video, like the camera's there, and there. You can tell everybody what you're doing next too for the off season and just where they can find you still. Hey, I appreciate that, and I'm excited to see that history project because that's awesome. So yeah, definitely look out for that. I'm gonna put all the links of Greg in the description because he does incredible work over there. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and peace.